returning. We're here talking about leveling up your love life. I'm so excited that I get to speak with my very special guest, Emilia Nagy. We were just chatting a little bit. We were getting really girly, but which is always fun. And we are, we're going to be talking about, you guessed it, men, dating, relationships, how to optimize, up-level your love life. And I would just, I'm going to share a little bit about her. We were catching up that we were both in San Diego for a long time, and then we both moved since from California. So just to share a little bit about Emilia, she's on a mission to lead fierce visionaries into unapologetic, conscious love. That's a powerful statement. Divine service and global impact by partnering powerfully with an amazing man. And all men, isn't that true? Men are really on our team, and she helps women to connect with their creativity by facilitating a sacred space for a deep inner vision, healing of wounds, injury, and dishonor, and claiming their sovereign creative power and dating discerningly for a true loving partnership. And she lives with her soulmate, Emil, and daughter, Alessandra. I love that name. And Rottweiler, Bernie. Love it. So I'm excited to dive right in to our conversation today.
Yay, me too. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm curious. What time is it there where you're at?
It's 10 p.m.
Oh, wow. I acknowledge you for doing this right now with me. It's awesome.
Thank you. It's all good. I'm a night owl anyway.
Yeah. So it's your Saturday night.
Yeah, Saturday night.
It is Saturday night.
Let's party.
Let's do it. Let's party. Let's talk about
Saturday night and I'm feeling on a high. Pretty baby.
Love it. We could just start singing to you guys. We'll entertain you one way or another. So let's dive in and talk about, how to pick the right guy. How do we go there? What, would you mind sharing some insights as far as certain steps that you might guide the women that you work with through around, getting connected to picking the right guy for them?
Yeah, there's 3 basic things, and that's it. It's really not rocket science, but as you probably already know, things that are simple aren't always easy.
Right.
But there's 3 steps. And the first step is to clean your slate, heal old wounds, button up old relationships, really be available. Really be available, because if you're not available, you are going to attract the same energy. And so it's courageous, it's intentional, it's visionary, because you're forward thinking, you're visioning ahead, you're not looking behind, right? So the first step is to clean your slate. And I'll talk more in detail about the things that we do when we clean our slate. We do need to address old wounds. We need to address old heartbreak, because the last thing you want is to meet this amazing man and then have a ton of drama going on that takes away from what you can bring to the table.
For certain. I was going to ask you, how does one go? Well, how do you know if you're not available? I think there's got to be a deeper sense of awareness there, and sometimes it's hard to see. Well, I think I'm emotionally available. I think I want to be, I want to be with someone, but maybe what the universe is showing you is that you keep attracting unavailable people. So you know, how do you flip the script? How do you know? What are some of the questions to ask to know that
Yeah.
you're available?
Well, if you find yourself thinking about an ex a lot, that's a clear sign that your energy is still wrapped up in that energy, in that person. If you find yourself feeling a lack of confidence, or a lot of times it shows up like hopelessness, if you're finding yourself feeling any of that, that's very normal. But what it does is it clogs up your emotional space. It clogs up your, what I call your magical receptive feminine container. Those sabotaging beliefs, those ideas, those possibly pining for somebody, those things clog you up. And so then you're not available to connect. You're not there. You're not present. You're wrapped up in something else. And there's, with this step, the cleaning your slate step, because I'll tell you the other two, and then we'll go back to this one, because I
Yeah.
want to talk more in depth about this one. So the other two are just dating discerningly, which is learning how to date. Like, just, I want to just public service announcement, nobody is a dating expert. The only reason why I'm a dating expert is because I'm a master that was once a disaster. I was such a disaster. I dated for 10 years. I dated narcissistic men, emotionally unavailable men. I believed men that lied to me, and there's very few that lied to me, but I believed them when they're like, oh, I want to marry you, right? Like, there was one basically in 10 years. So it's really not that bad. But dating discerningly, there is a strategy, but not a strategy from the perspective of like you have to strategize and be manipulative, but a strategy from the perspective of that there's things that work and there's things that don't work. And if you don't know what they are, and if you're trying to date and you're not getting the quality of men that you want, or the quantity of dates that you're available to go on, then there's a lot that can be done there to give you those connections. So that's dating discerningly. That's putting in the volume coming in so that you do have selection, and also that your cave woman part of you that wants a mate, that she doesn't go crazy because there's tons of gentleman callers, right? So that's the second piece, is dating discerningly, learning what that means. And that could be like a whole other show we do, Cindy, about what that actually is and what that means and the steps to dating discerningly. And then the last step is partner powerfully. Partner powerfully. What that means is learn about men, understand that yes, they do have different brains. Science has shown us again and again and again, male brains are different. Estrogen brains that are soaked by estrogen function differently. They have different priorities. So understand men, understand how they talk, understand how they use language. They actually use language very differently than women use language. So these are things to understand that make you a high value woman. They make you a great partner. And when you're a great partner, a high value masculine man will see that from miles away. They'll know that, because men are all about teamwork. They understand teamwork in a way that's much more visceral than women. Because think about men, right? Think about like this, all the sports they do and all the stuff that they do together. And it's like, yo, dude, you, and they work together and they do stuff together. Women can get competitive and catty, but men understand teamwork. And so when they see a woman that has her partnering skills sharpened, if you will, it's like a high quality man is not going to turn away from that. That makes you a magnet. So those are the three things: clean your slate, date discerningly, partner powerfully.
Yeah, and
We do a show on each one, but those are the three.
absolutely. And you talked about, understanding men and how they how their minds are different and how they communicate different. Would you mind expanding just a little bit on that, giving maybe even an example? Because I feel like, women might go, oh yeah, no, I get it. And then they're treating men like big hairy women and not seeking to understand them, but maybe coming to a conclusion, right? So,
Yes. Well, men are very literal.
mhm.
So there's really no room to be, to like expect him to get it, think that she should know. Like even as simple things as like your birthday. Like I know it sounds crazy and so women get so pissed off and I've been there too. But it's like if you have a masculine man in your life and he forgets your birthday, it's not personal. It's probably because he's focused on something else, and you would be a great partner to remind him without any like pressure or expectations,
Mhm.
and just partner with him because men they're focused on producing a result, and it's a beautiful thing because they have all their power, all their energy behind. I want to get this done. I want to get this done. I want to get this done. I want to get her to have an orgasm. I want to take her to the restaurant. I want to make her happy. I want to make sure she's satisfied, right? All of their energy, all of their resources, right, is behind that intention, that focus, if you will. Women have that too. It's a mode that we get into when we're working, or a lot of times like we can be masculine in our corporate jobs and things like that. But we have a much more diffuse awareness brain where we can notice a million things at once. We'll remember Mary and Anne's birthday and all our kids' birthdays, and when who likes to eat what they want in their sandwich, what they don't want in their sandwich. We'll know what's in the fridge. We'll have an inventory in the back of our mind of the pantry. It's just
Totally.
not that way. Men don't have that brain. And an example is like if we're walking across the room and there's like a pair of socks and the guy, it's his socks and he left them there and he didn't pick them up. It's like he literally doesn't see them. Like he honestly, I'm telling you, he does not see them because he's going for the salt or he's going to get in the car and pick up the kids, whatever he's doing. We women, we see them. They scream at us. They're like, get me out of the way. And so a lot of, that causes us to be demeaning to men and think that men are misbehaving and think that they're doing that on purpose, but they're not. And it's so sad when women call their men like it's like having another kid. Like it's so demeaning, like the things women say about men, that
Very
if we
emasculating.
turned it around and men started saying those things about women, there would be shit to pay. Like, so it's just that kind of concept of just really
Mhm.
understanding that there is a thinking process and a being and a way of being and a way of living that is different, and investing some time and energy. You probably got a college degree, you finished high school, you invested time and energy in all these other areas of your life that you're successful. If you want to be successful in a relationship, if you want to have lifelong fulfillment in a marriage with your dream man, then learn about men.
I can't agree with you more. It's like, it's so interesting because I feel like, I've been having conversations about, as women, we can jump to conclusions and, create stories, and we're much better at that than men are. And men do it too. But, I even had a situation when, I was on a little intermission before we started, um, and my son was asking, he always asks me, for certain things, and I'm very well aware of that. So I'm aware that he picks and chooses that, oh, mommy, I want to watch this, or I want to do this. And so I went in and asked my guy, I'm like, hey, have these things happened? And he's like, no. And I just had a conversation with him about XYZ. And I was like, I figured, I was just curious, I know how he can be, but I'm not making him wrong. Right. And I think there's that, there's oftentimes that misunderstanding of, well, as women, we can get triggered or want things a certain way or get into that controlling mode. But if you can just lean back, and I feel like that's what you're sharing, just lean back and get to seek to understand and be in that curious place of learning, then a high value man that you're looking to have that relationship with, he's going to recognize that within you and be like, where have you been all my life? Right.
Yes.
So what's another reason why women struggle with really attracting the right man for them too?
Yeah, well, within those three categories we talked about, there's things, right? So if we go back to the first one, we're talking about, well, what makes you unavailable? How do you know you're unavailable? And some of the things that make you unavailable, they're not obvious. They're not obvious. So it's kind of like you have to be willing to look beneath the surface. If you think of it like an iceberg, you see the top, but there's like a whole bunch of stuff underneath. And the way that you're going to receive that feedback in life is at your job, through your friends, through the dating journey. That's why I always say the dating journey, once you really just allow it and accept it and take it on as a learning opportunity and as a personal growth journey, it's so fascinating and so exciting and so rewarding, because you learn so much about yourself. You learn so much about men. You can use it as a feedback mechanism to know, okay, well, I got that, but I didn't get that. I know when I was dating, little by little, like as I would go on a date, it'd be like the men start, and I see this in my students, my clients. It's like as they do the work, the next date is just a little bit higher quality and a little bit higher quality and a little bit higher quality. And as they're doing the deeper excavating of the things that are blocking them, they suddenly, it's like, there he is. Oh my God. But if they hadn't taken those baby steps, if they hadn't done that work, they wouldn't have recognized him, or they wouldn't have been ready to receive what he was offering, or they wouldn't have been able to commit or show up the way that they got to show up because they did the inner work, right? So those things have to do with shame, which blocks our self-confidence. And so if you feel like you're lacking in confidence in some way, which shows up in like thoughts of hopelessness or thoughts of just deprecating thoughts of any kind, or like thoughts that are, you could even just go as simple as positive thoughts that are not positive about yourself, then usually that shows us that we have some healing to do, some inner forgiveness to do. And that's a very normal thing, because so many of us are honorable people that we hold ourselves accountable for things that go wrong in our lives, even when those things are not our fault. And I see this a lot, like so many spiritual, successful, amazing women hold themselves back because of something that happened years ago that they fault themselves for somehow, whether it was with an ex or in childhood. And it's important to take the time and dig deep, because the more of that work that you do, the more available you become for co-creating a sacred partnership, like a divine feminine, divine masculine merging in a human marriage. I could go on, Cindy. I'm going to stop. I just will blab.
That shame can really work as a block and a protectant between you and really really creating that sacred partnership. So what would be some of, a couple of steps to start, digging deeper and unhooking from that that block. Let's say it's shame, or let's just say it's, self-doubt, criticism, that inner critic.
Yeah, and most of us don't know, right? Like these are things we're not always conscious of. But one thing I like to teach that is like really simple and an easy way to dive into your own relationships and get curious and notice quickly what kind of dynamics they're running and how you're participating is to think about this. Think about whether your relationships are reciprocal, which reciprocal relationships are sustainable, they're fulfilling, they're built on giving and receiving, they're built on trust, they're built on co-creation. Now, a lot of us really struggle and we don't know the difference between reciprocal relationships and transactional relationships. And a lot of times we end up in transactional relationships, not because we want to, but because it's kind of like instinct. It's sort of like human normal. And we don't know how to bring out that spiritual, sacred soul aspect. And that's why the healing work is so important. But the transactional relationships, they're kind of like alliances, like on that show, Survivor.
Mm-hmm.
They're alliances. They're based on circumstances. They're based on earning and compensating and deserving, earning and deserving. Like, your friend got you about a $30 gift for your birthday. So, oh, you're going to get her about that. Have you ever I've had that calculation before, right? Like,
yeah.
her gift was like $50. That's probably what I'll spend, right? Like so normal, so subconscious, but if we do that, then it becomes transactional. And that the problem is the transactional relationships don't have enough depth or trust or fulfillment built in to last. They won't last. And so that's where excavating those things comes in, because then we can become really authentic and really honest with ourselves and with the men we date, and ask for what we need. And when we talked about them having different brains, it's so important that we give them quality information about what we would like they want that, because they want to please us, they want to provide for us. And once we learn about ourselves and do the inner journey, then we can share that with them, and we can be authentic and we can be vulnerable. And so then we become more available for the sacred partnership types of relationships, which are the giving and receiving, which, if you think about it, giving and receiving are in the realm of the infinite. Like, I could give you your favorite succulent, and that's worth infinitely more. It's priceless to you because it's your favorite succulent, right? Like, and you could give me a trip to Hawaii, and that's priceless to me because I got engaged there or something. Let's just say, right? Like, that's a whole different measuring stick, if you will. But the truth is, there isn't a measuring stick, because everything is priceless, or you can't compensate it or earn it. It's so precious and unique, right? But we get caught up in the transactional, which is the earning and the deserving, and we try to earn love, we try to deserve love. We feel like if they do something first, we have to compensate back, right? And so those are the things that show up. Like when you were asking me, how do you know you're not available? When you see yourself participating in transactional relationships with what I just said, if you take that looking glass and look at your relationships and you see that, gosh, there's just these very few relationships that don't feel transactional. And if you notice that you're showing up in that transactional sort of way, then I just would tell you, you would be so ecstatic to get help doing your inner work, because then you can start creating these reciprocal relationships, and it's a whole other way of living life. It's just, amazing. It's so worth it. Like, it's worth it. The work, the time, the money, the resources you spend, like, it's so worth it.
Absolutely. I agree with you there. And so if one finds themselves in more of transactional relationships, and maybe they're in a relationship, they love the person, but they find that they're keeping score, they're in that, oh, well, I've done this, they should do that, whatever it is, how would you suggest that they start to shift that, start to excavate that? Do you have a couple of steps that you might suggest
Yeah,
just for start?
there's three things I do in that first stage of the cleaning the slate. And the first is just releasing ideas about what's possible. I'm too independent to have love. I'm too I'm too fat. Like that was one of mine, right? Like my dad told me I'm too fat when I was 16. No one will marry you. So I carried that. I believed it. I took it on. I was like always trying to prove it wrong. So we can look at beliefs that just hold us back, because those beliefs will have us trying to prove that it's wrong or just living into it as if it's right. And so then that becomes a way of kind of like, if you're trying to prove that it's wrong, you're always going to be trying to compensate for something, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So
so you're constantly in resistance. So if you're trying to prove something wrong, you're always in that resistance place, so that you're in a place of even proving yourself worthy energy.
Yeah.
And not, the complete opposite of acceptance.
Right. And then that causes, there's no softness, there's no vulnerability, there's no receptivity, there's no space. And with a high quality masculine man, like they have the dick, like form follows function, right? Like there's a reason why they're looking for a feminine woman. Like that's the polarity, that's what makes it sexy. So yeah, if you have a bunch of things in the way, like blocking your own self-confidence or your own sense of worthiness that you can receive, which is the other piece we do, which is the forgiveness, that really restores our sense of worthiness and our sense of being worthy of love. Because what happens is, and I did this, I'm going to share my own example.
Yeah.
I had a really hard childhood, and I blamed my parents for so long for so many things, and I'm still working through a lot of things. But holding onto that hatred, I subconsciously sabotaged my own success, because I believed I wasn't worthy because I had all this hatred in my heart. So when we're holding on to things like that, that's when we want to do that inner forgiveness work. And with my work, I have a process. There's different process modalities that people use, but the forgiveness work is so important, because we need to detach our worthiness from our performance. We need to detach our worthiness from what we feel or our emotions, right? Like those things are separate. It's kind of like the transactional and reciprocal. You can't earn worthiness. You can't deserve worthiness. You can't compensate for worthiness, right? So it's just getting some of that emotional IQ and that emotional understanding. Like I really needed that, because I grew up in a home that really had very little of that. My parents were PhDs, but when it came to emotional PhDs, like it was like grade 4, And so I think for a lot of us, I see this for a lot of us, most of us don't get the relationship education that we need to have healthy, successful, reciprocal, fulfilling, sustainable partnerships, right? So if we don't get it from our families of origin, we're not going to get it at school. Gosh, they don't even teach us how to write a check at school, right? So where are we going to learn these skills? And that's why if you're finding yourself in transactional relationships, if you're finding yourself struggling with some of the things that I talk about, you're perfectly normal, and it's totally okay. And it's probably why Cindy and I do what we do and have the work that we have and have the clients that we have, because we're needed. This is needed. This is important.
Absolutely. And And you hit a really good point. I share this often, with clients, and I feel like it bears repeating. It's like they don't teach these skills growing up. And I tend to believe that most of the time our parents are doing the best they can with the skill set they have and with
Right.
what they know. And usually it's based on what was passed down to them. And I feel like we really are living in a time where there's so many resources available. There's so much support to unhook from old ways of being and old ways of thinking to really break through
Yes.
to, you know, getting what you want in this area of
Yes.
life. And the first step, and you really talked about this in the beginning, it's also believing it's possible for you, because you could do all the work, but if you don't have a grain of belief in your heart, it won't work.
Yeah.
There'll always be another limiting belief that comes in there that tries to shape shift itself into some other form of fear, which then, blocks your heart from really creating the love that you desire. And if you desire it, it's meant to be created for you.
It's meant to be created. Yes. And I feel like we're the answered prayers of our grandmothers, great grandmothers, like this is what they would have done if they could have. But they didn't have the internet. They didn't have each other like we have. They didn't have Facebook. They didn't have the books, the resources, the psychologists, right? And so I feel, and I'm getting goosebumps right now saying this, it's like any woman, any successful woman that wants that sacred, sustainable, fulfilling partnership for life, like you can create that, you can build that, you can end those cycles that you've undoubtedly were shown of sacrificing, of settling, of playing small. So many of us do these things in love, and that's because that's what we saw, right? And that gets passed down in the feminine line, generation from generation. But we can end them. We can end them. We can end them now. We have what we need to end them. And I'm so happy, like, that so many women are doing the work and are showing up and are calling it in. And it's just such an amazing time to be alive.
For certain. And I'm excited that you were here with us today to really support these women, and knowing that everyone that's watching and listening, I acknowledge you for taking these steps of choosing yourself to level up this area of your life. And really, I truly believe when you level up your love life, everything else becomes just even on that higher vibrational plane. So
yeah, everything else levels up too. Dream job, dream place to live, and also I wanted to mention, Cindy, something you said, right? Like you need that grain of belief. And guess what? We have tools that, like, I learned that even if you don't have the belief, like if you have unbelief, if you have negative thoughts, you can release those thoughts. You can release them. So then what's left is that the not belief is gone. So what's left is faith and hope, right? So
and then you start to look for evidence of the faith, right? You start to look for evidence of what, where that is in your life. And that's where, the real fun and magic unfolds.
Yes, the magic and the miracles start to happen. And I think, creating sacred love is nothing short of a miracle. And because even though we have all the tools, right? Even though we have everything you and I are talking about, we also have some pretty nasty cultural and social programming to work through when it comes to love, when it comes to the worthiness of men, when it comes to the worthiness of women, when it comes to sacred union, that tantric bond, what it actually is, what is sacred sex, like those things are not out there. You have to go look for them. You're just being shown cheapened versions of what that is, that, you know, you have to be skinny and you have to look like this or else you're not going to be loved. You're not going to have pleasure. You're not going to have joy. Those things are lies, but that's what our culture shows us every single day, right? So there is a bit of undoing as well, along with not necessarily having the skills. We do have now so much support, but we also have a bunch of undoing to do as well, too, right? So,
well, because we have that, you know, societal and worldly view that feeds into the fears and
yes,
the unworth.
and pits women and men against each other, which
that's a whole other conversation. We got to get into that one sometime soon, because that is such a divisive and very you know, horrible thing that I see in society, that you know, if we allow it, it does so much damage to men and women, and it creates that division and enemies, you know, when really we all want the same thing. It's just, you know, learning how to go about that. And, you know, I think one thing I just want to share and have you speak into is, I think sometimes women, you know, get this feeling, or maybe in their ego, like, why do I have to do all the work? Why doesn't he, you know, why aren't men doing work? What would you say to a woman that might be thinking that or asking that question?
You know, it's funny because that is one of the cultural and social narratives that we have, right? It's kind of cool to say that. It's cool to talk about your husband like he's another kid in the house, right? Like I talked about in the beginning, so demeaning, but so culturally normal, right? Culturally accepted. When I think about that, is I think about who built the roads. It wasn't women. Who built the homes? It wasn't women. Who built the buildings? It wasn't women. I mean, maybe there was one woman on the crew, maybe. So when we start to get into our narrative about men don't do anything, I just think like, well, look around. Most of what you see in this, if you live in a city, you know, if you live in the country like me, it's, you know, God made it. But if you live in a city, you're going to see what was built by men, male human beings. And so when you see that, can you then turn around and say they don't do anything? You know, I challenge that. I challenge that phrasing. I challenge that ideology. I really challenge it, because either you have a very unhealthy man, which then he probably, if he's an alcoholic or he has a drug or gambling problem, well, of course you're going to have problems. That's a whole other conversation. But if you have a healthy masculine man, I would really challenge that narrative. And the other piece about that is, where are you not giving quality information? Where are you not partnering? Where are you not asking for help? Where are you not being vulnerable and receiving from him? Where are you withholding, maybe because of your past wounds, right? And so we really can't change another. But what I am saying is that there's plenty of evidence that men do a lot of freaking work, right?
Yeah, and I think too, it's, and maybe I love the way that you shared that too, because, you know, I also think that women might be thinking, well, yeah, maybe they do that work, but they're not doing work on themselves the way that I'm doing to, you know, be the best partner. But many men do work around this area too, that I've experienced, and because they desire to have a good partnership too. Anything that you would care to share on?
Yeah, and I think again it goes back to the difference in how we approach these concepts, right? Like we have different brains. What we think of as work is not what they think of as emotional work, right? Like their emotional work looks and feels different. Like they could be sitting on the couch and doing it. In fact, they do. They sit on the couch and they're actually building their testosterone. I remember I learned this, but I used to get so pissed off. Like literally sitting
Yeah,
there.
when a man, when you're buzzing around doing things and a man's
and I'm like,
she's
there's a
recharging.
dozen things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but he actually needs that. Yeah, yeah.
They need that. And then I notice, like, if I allow I'm talking about my husband in this case, if I allow him to have that downtime, it's like 45 minutes, he comes and finds us and he's revived. You know, instead of like me nagging him, it's like he's taking that time. He needs it. I need my time too. You know, mine looks different. Mine is potting and doing a million things and folding a million socks, but or going shopping, right? But that's my rest time. So I think there's that piece. And then also, you know, I think with the other really important thing I want to just say with this, because it is a big one for so many women today. And I want to say, you know, there's this Cherokee proverb I really love, and it says, you know, it's woman's walk on earth to lead man's heart to God. And it's the man's walk on earth to protect her so that she may find God. And that I'm getting goosebumps now saying it. And you know, that's the polarity. That's the feminine and the masculine.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
And when we think about our spiritual growth, that's not their calling if they're a masculine man. Yes, there's a lot of masculine leaders out there, but I have to tell you, I dated a lot of them because I used to think those were good, and those men were not there for me. They were not my rock. They were not my safe place because they had their own mission, their own vision, their own thing they were doing. And I'm not docking that. I'm just saying, if you have a regular guy that's showing up for you and the kids, and he goes to work every day and he doesn't appear to be, you know, singing hymns and doing things, it doesn't mean he's not doing anything. It doesn't mean he's not spiritually growing. It just means he's not doing it the way a female would do it. And that's a really important thing to keep in mind, I think, when it comes to like all areas in our relationships, because things will always look different.
Absolutely. And it's allowing for curiosity and trusting, you know, that comes with a lot of trust.
And that's the feminine, right? Yeah. Like leaning back, receiving. That's when you do your inner healing, when you do your releasing, when you do your self-forgiveness, when you receive compassion for the ways you've been wounded, you know, that's the cleaning, the slate piece that I talked about. Then you know who you are. You met yourself, and you can be in your own company in the quiet moments, and you're not lonely.
Yeah, for sure.
And then it's like, it doesn't matter what anyone else is doing because you're doing you, and that's it. That's fulfilling in and of itself.
Well, thank you so much, Emilia. I could continue talking for ever and ever and go into different topics for certain. I have no doubt, and I look forward to us connecting again very soon.
Likewise.
For our watchers and listeners, would you?
I do. I have something called How to Pick the Right Guy checklist. And it takes you through the dating discerningly portion talk about. It lays it all out. It's the exact method that I teach, is the exact method that my students use on average to meet their high quality masculine dream guy within 25 days or 6 months. That's only 1 date a week. So it works really, really well to filter out the wrong men and the time waster men and the men that are not going to be serious. So I have that. It's called How to Pick the Right Guy checklist. And should I say the link now, Cindy, or you're going to post it?
We've posted it. Yeah. So we posted the link, and then we'll also be emailing the link too. So
okay, perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So much fun.
And it also has some tidbits on how to move men from texting to calling, or from calling to date to an actual date. So how to progress quickly off the platforms, because you don't want to be spending a lot of time on email and phone. You want to meet so you can sniff each other's butts and then tell if it's there or not, right? Because you need that chemistry. So
absolutely, I love it, love it. Well, thank you again, and watchers, listeners out there, I know that you gained so much information and support around, busting through anything that might be holding you back from that next level of love. So I will, from our hearts to yours, we will see you very soon. And here's to you and leveling up your love life. Bye, everyone.